What is this?
Radio open. Welcome to Tangents.
That's sultry.
Welcome to
Everyone
Tangents.
who has, I'll be ego-wise for me, everyone who has listened to this has commented on your voice and how it's good for it. No one has said anything nice about me, and I take umbrage with that.
Your dulcet tones are well known across the realm.
I think you
Whereas
have like this timbre to your voice.
I am.
Is that a word?
People are probably listening to it more. Wow, Matt really is still alive. That's cool.
Matt speaks.
Yeah. So we could go a lot of different ways with this tangent. One of the things that we're releasing this week, I believe, I get lost nowadays, is a piece about AI. And it was funny how it was submitted, because we have a system in our production software where anyone on the team can submit an idea for a piece of blog content or something for you and I to talk about. And you would think, based on the history of how we all work, that I would be the guy to be like, hey, I think we should do a piece about AI, and specifically AI art, because I'm usually the R&D guy. I'm usually on the edge of all this stuff. But you actually submitted it. And your premise was interesting because it wasn't fear this or that this is going to disrupt the industry. It was that good ideas are good no matter what. And you're excited to see what someone like me can do with AI.
Yeah, it's just another tool. That's how I saw it. And being someone that you could put me in front of any of the design softwares and I'm going to be able to do absolutely nothing with it, nothing of value. And that's not me being cruel. That's just a realistic assessment of what my capabilities are. And I started messing around with, I think it was Crayon, which I think is powered by, is it pronounced DALL-E? Got it right. And I got some funny stuff. Like, I did weird, strange ideas. Eisenhower as a banana. Yeah. Just intermixing things. But I said to myself, when you being you, Matt, going through this creative process, what matters most is the idea and where you're taking it, not necessarily the platform or software in which it's being made. So a terrible idea will beget terrible creative. So it doesn't matter how smart the AI is, right? It's not at the point where it can be given a terrible idea and make it good, especially because what it's doing is based on what is known. It's looking at what is known. It's taking what already has been, recycling it and regurgitating it. It's not truly in the act of pure creation. And I would argue that none of us are really in the act of pure creation. We're all taking what has happened, recycling it, repurposing it, and putting it back out there. So to me, it was something that could allow us to take a different approach to art creation. I know that you're actually using it now for some of our own brand stuff, because we always test out ideas for ourselves first before we bring them to clients. It's not our client's job to fund our R&D efforts. I'm glad you're doing that.
It's been actually really inspiring because it's actually, and I don't know if other creative leaders feel this way, but I certainly do, that it's also helped me better understand what I'm asking of human beings. Because AI generated art is built on what they call a prompt. And there are certain prompts that are pretty straightforward. Like, you can write in Eisenhower as a banana and get something that's probably an amalgamation of Dwight Eisenhower and a banana.
It's almost always the things that I do. It's like they took that morphing software from the late 90s and somewhere in the process hit pause and put that picture up.
Yeah. And that is one way to look at prompts. Another way to look at prompts is to be really into and understand design, understand art, understand color theory, and really get into crafting a prompt that actually delivers you a close proximity to what you're looking for. And there's still that, just like when you sit down and work in Photoshop or Illustrator or anywhere else, there's still that 20% or more margin of discovery that comes with it, where you don't quite know what the end result is going to be. So it really mimics the creative process fairly well, in the sense that you only get out of it the quality that you put into it, like you said, but also you might discover something that you never thought you wanted along the way. And there are variables that go into it. There are different styles that you have to consider.
So do you, when you're writing these out, is it, because I haven't, beyond like in the very sense odd statement that I would put in, is it like where you putting in, like how do you weight, do you weight things? Like for example, if the word impressionism is first and then Eisenhower banana, right? Does it take into account the impression, does it weight impressionism more than it does making Eisenhower into a banana? Or the other way around, like, is there much information around like how weighting works and where you put it? And also, are there, like when you're constructing search ads, you can do broad search, you can do specific, you can do phrase by putting things in quotations. Do those prompts exist, or is it still new?
It depends on the platform. I use Midjourney a lot. I'm finding it to be a lot of fun and pretty good. And Midjourney has prompts that are related to all those things and more. So for example, prompts that I would craft might start. I'll give you a funny example, because I use this for fun too, because it's just fun. It's unique and interesting. But my daughter Alice is really into doing makeup and stuff like that, the cosmetology kind of stuff. And what I do now is I use AI to generate portraits of princesses. And then I let her go on my iPad with the pencil in like a Photoshop type software, Procreate, and let her paint on the makeup. So I've got a whole folder on my desktop of just AI generated portraits of princesses. And I let her dictate to me some of the attributes, and then I plug them into the prompt. Right now we're watching, or I'm rewatching, but it's our first time watching Avatar: Last Airbender, and there are 4 different elements that you can bend in that show. So she'll say something like, I want a fire princess that I want to do makeup on, and I'll say, what are some of the characteristics of a fire princess? Let's talk about this. And she might say orange hair and red eyes. And you usually start the prompt with the subject that you're looking for. So it might be, in the case of your Eisenhower example, it might be President Dwight D. Eisenhower, comma. What's interesting is that, at least in Midjourney and DALL-E, it feels like the old days of Alta Vista.
Okay.
Where if you were searching for something specific, you had to put quotations around it or commas around it. But then you start building off of that. So you might say, and again, this is where the knowledge of what I do comes in really handy, is like, you might say punk style, comma, and then you might say red jacket with blue necktie, and you keep building off of that.
So how does the iteration process work? Is it where So once you get the first look, right, are you able to then freeze that look and make adjustments to that look? Or is it more you have that look and it's not quite where I was going, and you're actually changing the initial parameters, thus losing that original work? Or is there an iteration stack that exists?
There is an iteration stack. You can version pieces, so you'll get something similar but not quite the same. And what I usually do is I'll re-roll. So I'll get an iteration.
I like they call it re-roll. That's cool.
Yeah, I'll re-roll it, and that will allow it to just read the prompt again and create something entirely different. But I'll also version it if I like it. If I don't like it, I'll just ask for.
See, so there must be some sort of weighting going on, because if there wasn't some sort of randomization and weighting going on, you would not have a re-roll create something that is different. The same parameters would produce the same result every time. So there is some sort of aspect of random variability built into this system.
You'll appreciate this one. I was looking for, like, building out almost a G.I. Joe looking kind of character for reasons that we've been talking about in the background. Super, super secret project. But I could not get that, and I don't remember the main character of G.I. Joe. Maybe you do, but it was like,
it's Joe.
Is it Joe?
I think so.
Gastrointestinal Joe?
All I know is that there's that ninja character.
Yeah, and Snake Eyes. I remember Snake Eyes.
They made so much money off him because they didn't have to paint him.
Yeah.
He was all just black injection molded. I was watching, so I saw that, and I was like, I bet you charged, and I bet they charged more for him too, which really made me happy.
I used to love me a good Snake Eyes battle. But anyways, I could not find, and I'm like, I want to make this character. I have all of the other parts of the prompt. Like, I have the animation style, like the look, the whole vibe is down pat. So I'm like, where can I go? Who can I reference? So one of the cool things about Midjourney and also DALL-E is that you can throw an image in. You can, as long as it's an image link.
You can give a reference image. Nice.
So I chose the wrestler Sting from Dark Sting era.
Yeah, not Crow Sting during the NWO time. Yeah.
Like,
you're talking 90s Sting.
Derivative of the Ultimate Warrior Sting.
Yeah. They actually, so little tangent here, they were partners for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's something that they carried that over it. Sting and Jim Hellwig, who was the Ultimate Warrior, because there's a lot of warriors, but they were a tag team partnership. I think is like in the South or in Texas somewhere or something.
That's where he learned the art of the face paint, because his face paint was on point in that era of his character. But I used him, and Midjourney has a prompt called image weight, and it's on a sliding scale of 0 to 5, and I can get almost photo accurate depictions of these people, whether it's Sting or Tom Cruise or whoever. And some people do that. Some people start building an image based on a known celebrity or like an Eisenhower, because there's a lot of our imagery and footage of that person.
And you're able to communicate a lot with that one image, right? You can, instead of saying a spiked hair, blonde, very buff, face painted man from the 90s, you can just put up Sting.
Yeah, and the most, I guess I call it the heaviest image weighting, or the most to the photo, like really got into. AI still has trouble with faces, and there are ways to work through that and fix it.
Someone argue that's a good thing.
Yeah, there are other AIs that deal specifically with the face problem of your AI, and then there's also. And I don't want to discount what Adobe's doing with AI because it's really cool. But the heaviest image weight actually got down to the picture I had chosen. He had a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow, like it was very stubbly, and it got that in there. But I needed that for that character that I was building. I needed that really that jawline,
Yeah.
because you need that for like a G.I. Joe-esque sort of execution.
Super square. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm using it for us. Every episode of this podcast, every piece of episode art is AI generated. And then there's also some of the blog stuff that we're doing now. I'm using AI. Like the piece about AI has AI imagery, as it probably should. And it's still a squeaky space. I'm being very careful about it.
Well, it's working off of a lot of knowns, so you have a real opportunity in a negative sense to reinforce bias.
There's that, and it's also copywriting is tricky.
Yeah.
And so I'm being very careful with it. Like you said, we don't use it for client work right now because it's really hard to copyright an AI generated image. And I think we're going to see the cost of these things get higher and higher because people are going to start trying to litigate these situations where, do you have Eisenhower's estate's permission to make that image?
Yeah, and at what point has it fundamentally changed enough that it's no longer completely recognizable? And I'm not an IP lawyer at all, but those things are going to come into play. Moreover, the amount of computing power that goes into these things, that's a challenge. Eventually, right now it's free and it's fun and everyone's messing around with it.
Right.
But everything that's free and fun eventually turns into, all right, how are we going to make money? Where are we going to make money? I know, like Crayon, I know they serve ads in between things and stuff like that, but the licensure of it for brands is certainly going to be an area where a brand is going to need to be aware of what they can and can't use, how they can and can't use it. That goes all the way to, I see some of the folks that I follow utilizing memes like from like The Office, and to me that's always strung, hit a sour note for me, because you're taking, I get it, it's a meme and you're utilizing them, but now you're utilizing it for the profit motivation, and it's not quite the right thing to be doing.
It's something that you and I are circling. If you look at some of the upcoming content that you've submitted to be written about and I've submitted to be written about, as usual, we're saying very similar things in different ways, where I had this idea of looking at it from a brand perspective, and my piece was like, don't be a cover brand. And you wrote one, or you submitted an idea that was like, their IP is not your IP.
Yeah.
And you put up examples of some brand or something using the Metallica font on the side of a bus.
It bothered me so much, because it was a campaign that was showcased in a national association-based article. I want to say it might have been on thefinancialbrand.com, and they were talking so much about what a great idea it was, and all I could see is you ripped off Metallica's logo. That's not cool, man. You're essentially building an advertising campaign, because it wasn't just, this is going to be fun, we're going to make this logo and throw it up on social media, everyone's going to have a laugh. This was on the side of a bus. So you spent $7,500 on the wrap alone, plus who knows how many thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on the rights to do that. I didn't see any mention of paying for the IP of Metallica's logo and font. And everyone was just talking about how like intelligent and smart and great it was. And I'm like, you ripped off someone's idea. You ripped off their intellectual property. And it's thievery. And that, maybe some people think that's a little strong, but I think it's theft. And the reason why is someone put work and time and effort and investment into that. You are taking that work and time and investment that they've put into their brand over decades, and you're leveraging it for your own gain, and you're giving them nothing for that. It's just not right.
It reminds me of thank God it's been forever since I watched this, but remember that movie, Art and Copy?
Yeah.
They talk about that. I think that was like 2009 that movie came out, but they talk about that in the context of the whole Got Milk campaign. And I remember whoever he was, like the guy that runs the brand. And Got Milk is one of those things that got ripped off everywhere. Got this, got that, got weed, and he had a really interesting perspective on it. He was like, I could spend all my time sending cease and desist letters and chasing those people down, and it would not sell one more drop of milk. And I feel that you're right about the IP challenge, but some of these are allowed to happen because it's endemic right now.
Yeah, and I get it. It's like a philosophical stance. You're correct. You can't, and he was correct. You can't litigate all of these. I say to myself, just because you can do it and get away with it, should you be doing that? And what does this say about you? And that's where I get a little uppity about it, because I feel that it sends the wrong message from that brand. In my opinion, I don't think it's something they should be doing. Yeah,
and I have a similar opinion, but I think if it's a homage and it builds upon and I'm not saying that your example was, because it was clearly just a ripoff of a font, and somebody's a Metallica fanboy and thought it would play well.
Lars didn't see it.
Yeah,
he did. He'd be coming.
Yeah, but if it's an homage to the original that is unique enough that it actually builds upon it and adds value, I see that as cool. I'll pick on, and I'm a huge fan of the show, so I'm not like complaining about it, but Stranger Things is an 80s themed show that's basically inspired by Steven Spielberg movies of that time. And there's a lot of unique story that goes into that. There's a lot of unique IP. But one of the reasons that people like it is that it feels familiar and it feels nostalgic and it feels...
And they're leveraging that, obviously, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're totally leaning into that. But it's unique enough that it's not a ripoff of some of those movies. Like Spielberg didn't direct The Goonies, but it's not The Goonies. It's not...
It adds to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't just utilize it for its own gain. So it's kind of like a continuation of...
Yeah, this is my submission to this style.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.